Wow, it's so wonderful to see all you all here. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to tonight's public information session for the Shallowland disposal area. I will be facilitating tonight's meeting. So with us tonight, we have Colonel Nick Moline. He is the Pittsburgh District Commander. And we have Lieutenant Colonel Robert Burnham. He is the Buffalo District Commander. And we have our partners from EPA. We have partners from DEPA. We have partners from Parks Township, emergency managers, and the supervisor from Parks Township. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Armstrong County Emergency Manager, and the Department of Energy Office of Legacy Management. And I want to thank all of those partners for coming and helping us with the question and answer portion. We also have all of our subject matter experts up here that will help with the question and answer portion. So at this time, I will turn the microphone over to Colonel Moline.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Colonel Nick Moline. I'm the commander of the Pittsburgh District. It's great to be back here in Parks Township. As I sort of scan the crowd, I see some friendly faces, folks I know who I've talked to over the last 3 public information sessions we've done here. And I also had a chance to meet some new folks who are coming for the first time to hear about this project. Just so you sort of understand how the Corps of Engineers is running this. Pittsburgh District, we're based downtown at the Federal Building, but we cover all Western Pennsylvania. So we're sort of overall keeping an eye on this project, but we brought in the Buffalo District of the Corps of Engineers, who are the subject matter experts on the remediation of these sorts of sites across the United States. They do this work all through Ohio and up into New York, as well as here at Shallowland Disposal Area. So we brought in the experts who really know how to manage these projects very well. There's a couple things that we keep in mind when we are working on this, and some of you have already heard this because I try to stick on sort of the same set of points, but our number one priority is safety. It's the safety of you, the people who live in this area surrounding the Shallowland disposal area. It's the safety of those contractors and folks who are working on the site. And it's the safety of the people of Western Pennsylvania. And we take that very, very seriously. We've been preparing really intensively in order to be able to execute the active remediation, the removal of the material out of the trenches in a safe and responsible way. We put a ton of effort into it over many years, and it's going to culminate here soon in the fall winter with beginning the actual active remediation. So one, safety is right at the front of our mind. The second thing is transparency, because we as an agency are working for you. We're here executing this remediation activity to support the people in this area. And it's important that we listen to you and we develop and provide responses for any concerns or questions that you might have. And I hope that for the folks who have been to a couple of these, you've seen that we've been doing that. As we get questions and concerns, whether it's individually or out to the whole group at the next public meeting, we make a very concerted effort to be transparent, because this project's being done on your behalf. And the final piece is we want to get this right. And we want to be able to deliver this, so when we look forward at the end of this remediation, this is a thing for the history books, but it's been done correctly and responsibly. And that's one of the reasons why, if you look at some of the folks we have here from Buffalo District, we have health physicists, we have nuclear physicists, we have specialists in remediation who have done this sort of work in other places. I mean, we're bringing in all the best minds to work on this, to deliver it. And so, those are sort of my 3 priorities, and I think there are shared priorities with all of our partners. Really look forward to this session tonight. I think I think you'll see the presentation. We took your questions from last session, and we put them into the presentation. So just trust us. There will be an opportunity. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions for sure as soon as the presentation is done. But the presentation might have an answer to some of your questions. So I just ask, give us a chance to pitch that. And just thank you all for coming out. This is a great showing on what's a pretty decent summer evening here in Western Pennsylvania. I think back to last Saturday, and it was freezing cold and raining. So a nice change. But I'll pass it over to Colonel Rob Burnham, our Buffalo District Commander.
Hey, thank you, sir. Oh, it's a little loud. Again, Rob Burnham, Buffalo District Commander. Great to be here. Great to see you all again. Great to see new faces here. Colonel Moline covered it perfectly, right? We have a great partnership with the Pittsburgh District. This is their area of responsibility. We have the expertise for this, right? We have the know-how, we have the personnel, we have the job series, we have the toxicologists, the health physicists, just like Colonel Moline had said. And just to give you some scale, we have 3 active remediations happening right now in our district. We have 1 more coming online, and then we have this project. This is something that we absolutely take seriously, but we know how to do this. This is the bread and butter, as you'd say, for our district. And I'm glad that we're here because I think the presentation is good tonight. We're going to go through the project goals. We're going to talk about the background, bring everybody back up to speed if you're not familiar with that. Really talk the timeline. And throughout, I think you're going to see a common theme of safety, which Colonel Moline hit on. And that is the most important. That is paramount for us. That is baked into all of our systems, our processes. Our safety, your safety, the public safety, that is something that we absolutely consider when we start this project, when we do the investigation up through the record of decision and then the active remediation. We take it dead seriously. We want to communicate that, convey that to you tonight. We want to answer any questions that you have. And then really, I think we have a portion in here where we talk about what to expect, right? When we start the actual remediation, the operations, what's that going to look like, and walk you through that. I like the way we set this meeting up. We've installed a portion for questions and answers, and I believe the cards have been sent out, as Carol had, but at that time, ask those questions. We want to really just level bubbles, answer all your questions, and really dig in as much as we can. So I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a good meeting. And I'm going to turn it over to Steve Reeson, who is our project manager, who's been doing a tremendous job with this project.
All right, thank you, sir. I've got my own mic, so can everybody hear me okay? All right, very good. So yes, welcome everyone. As Lieutenant Colonel Burnham said, my name is Steve Reeson. I work for the Buffalo District Corps of Engineers, and I'm the project manager for the SLDA project. So I'm not going to repeat, Carol went over the list of folks who are here with us tonight, our partners, but this is just another list showing all of the other partners and stakeholders that we've been actively engaged with and coordinating with, throughout the prep phase of this project, and we will continue to coordinate with all of those agencies, individuals, organizations as the project goes on. So here's our agenda for tonight's meeting, rather. I hope you did get a chance to visit our posters and talk with our technical team members. But as Carol mentioned, if you didn't, don't worry. Going to have at least 2 more opportunities to get your questions answered at the question and answer session. And then even after that, we'll have our folks back at those posters. You can go and talk to them one-on-one if you would prefer to do that. So let's get started. So our project goals remain unchanged from before, and they are worth repeating, even though Colonel Moline already mentioned, I think, 2 of these, but that's okay. First, the Corps of Engineers is committed to ensuring the safety of our workers, the community, and the environment. Secondly, we will be as transparent as possible in our communications about the project. And finally, the Corps is committed to keeping you informed and involved and responding to your questions and concerns, just like we're doing here tonight. So I want to take a minute to familiarize you with the program under which the Corps of Engineers is authorized to clean up the SLDA site. Early atomic weapons activities were conducted first by the Manhattan Engineer District. That's how the Manhattan Project got its name. Followed by the Atomic Energy Commission. The formerly utilized site's Remedial Action Program, or what we call FUSRAP, we love our acronyms. There's going to be a lot of them tonight, but don't worry. I'm going to tell you what they are. So we call that FUSRAP for short. That was started in 1974 under the U.S. Department of Energy. In 1997, Congress transferred management of FUSRAP to the Army Corps of Engineers. So as it says, the FUSRAP mission is to identify, investigate, and remediate contamination at sites involved in our nation's early atomic weapons program. The FUSRAP authorization limits the Corps of Engineers to removing only radioactive waste and other chemical contamination that is commingled with radioactive waste within the boundaries of the SLDA site, which we'll go over here in just a minute. Any other contamination at the site is the responsibility of the property owner to address. So now we'll go over a brief history of the site because I know we do have quite a few folks who might be with us here for the first time, so we don't want to assume that you know everything. So the SLDA site, outlined here in yellow, is 44 acres in size. It's located on River Road in Parks Township. It's approximately 2 miles northwest of here and about 23 miles northeast of Pittsburgh. The site is private property that is owned by BWX Technologies, or BWXT for short. The Corps of Engineers has signed a site access agreement with BWXT, which gives us, it enables us to conduct our cleanup project on their property. In 1957, the Nuclear Materials and Equipment Corporation, also known as NUMEC, began operating a nuclear fuel production facility in the nearby borough of Apollo. During the 1960s, NUMEC disposed of radiologically contaminated waste and debris from the Apollo facility in 10 trenches at the SLDA site in accordance with Atomic Energy Commission regulations at that time. Those disposal regulations were rescinded in 1981, and the SLDA site was added to the FUSRAP program by congressional legislation in 2002. The project timeline has shifted slightly since our last meeting. Site infrastructure and preparation activities will continue into the fall of this year. Waste excavation, transportation, and disposal are expected to begin in the late fall to early winter. And we will keep you informed of the exact start date of remediation as we get closer to starting that. The remediation is expected to take approximately 6 years, but that total duration will ultimately be determined by the rate at which we can safely remove and characterize the waste. One of your primary concerns expressed during our last meeting was about community safety and the way that we plan to keep you safe during remediation. So next I'm going to explain numerous ways that your safety is our #1 priority. The best way to describe our approach to safety is that we have implemented multiple layers of protection to keep the community safe. Over the course of the project, we will have measures in place to protect the air, the water, our workers, and the public. I want to emphasize again that safety is our #1 priority for this project, and the next few slides will demonstrate that commitment to safety. Cost and schedule will never take precedence over safety. So it's important to understand that the only way you would be exposed to contamination in air is to come into contact with contaminated dust or dirt. If someone is not exposed to contaminated materials, there is no risk. Therefore, our primary focus to prevent exposure is through contamination control. Some of you may have noticed that we routinely spray the haul road and parking areas at the site with water. The reason we do this is to prevent the buildup and the spread of dust by the wind. The primary source of that dust on the haul road comes from the stone parking areas and storage areas, which are not contaminated. Another way we will control and prevent the spread of dust is by filtering the air from inside the buildings prior to it being released to the atmosphere. The excavation, characterization, packaging, and loading of waste will all occur inside those large buildings that you see out at the site. Each of those buildings is equipped with large blowers that pull the inside air through particulate and activated carbon filters to remove dust and odors from the air before it is released outside. In the material processing building, where most of the waste characterization will occur, each internal building has its own dedicated ventilation system, and all the air from those buildings will be filtered before it exhausts to the outside. The on-site laboratory also has HEPA filters on its exhaust stacks to prevent the release of contamination. The outlets of those filters will be routinely sampled and monitored to ensure that the filters are doing their job. We get this question a lot, so I'd like to take a minute to explain why we have all of those large buildings out at the site. So the primary purpose of those buildings is to enable us to work year-round during bad weather. Without those buildings, we would most likely have to stop work during bad weather or during the winter months, which is not a very efficient way of doing things. However, an added benefit of the buildings is to enhance our normal contamination control methods and provide positive containment of the waste materials. We have designed an air monitoring program to ensure the safety of the community and our workforce based on monitoring specific areas of the site. There are 3 separate air monitoring zones, or layers, that form the foundation of our air monitoring program: personnel, work area, and perimeter. The first air monitoring zone is the workers themselves, who will wear a small pump that pulls air through a filter located in their breathing zone to measure the air that they breathe. At the end of each workday, the filter is sent to the laboratory to be analyzed for radionuclides, metals, and respirable dust levels. This is known as personal breathing zone monitoring, or PBZ. The second zone consists of work area monitors, which are mobile and are moved to be near where the work is being performed. These air monitors pull air through a filter, which is sent to the laboratory and analyzed for radionuclides and beryllium. The work zone monitors also have a real-time meter that measures the amount of dust being generated. The dust monitors have alarms to notify us if dust reaches a certain level. This information is used to increase dust control methods or, if needed, to temporarily stop work activities and make adjustments. The third and final air monitoring zone is the perimeter air monitors. Perimeter air monitors are placed at fixed locations around the site to measure air quality at the site boundaries. These air monitors pull air through a filter to sample dust particles, which are sent to the laboratory and analyzed for radionuclides, beryllium, and gamma radiation. The perimeter air monitors also have real-time meters to measure the amount of dust in the air that will alarm to notify us if dust reaches a certain level. There are 9 total on-site air perimeter monitors, 1 off-site background air monitor, and all 10 of those monitors operate continuously 24/7. The air monitors sample dust particles to determine if they contain radiological contaminants, and they also measure gamma radiation and beryllium. To date, there have been no exceedances of any occupational exposure limits, air standards, or perimeter air monitoring action levels. Since our last meeting, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, PADEP, has installed 4 of their own perimeter air monitors, which are co-located with ours. This will enable PADEP to collect independent samples whose results will be used to confirm our results, adding another layer of protection for the air that you breathe. The photo on this slide shows one of those combined perimeter air monitoring stations out at the site. We also have an on-site weather station that is used to inform the project staff of site-specific weather information. If you didn't already, please visit our air monitoring poster after the presentation to see the locations of the perimeter air monitors and talk to our industrial hygienist for additional details. All right, so similar to dust in the air, contaminated soil carried or dissolved in water could provide another path for exposure to contaminants. To prevent that, we have designed several measures to control and treat wastewater generated at the site. We've installed a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant that will collect and treat all water that comes into contact or could come into contact with waste materials. This includes water from the trenches inside the excavation building, as well as water generated in the material processing building, the waste management building, the decontamination building, and the on-site lab. This water will be treated and tested to ensure compliance with all federal and state water quality standards before it is discharged into the river. To minimize the amount of water that needs to be treated, the site buildings were designed and constructed to prevent precipitation from entering those areas and becoming contaminated. That way, clean rainwater can continue to run off the uncontaminated areas of the site naturally. All sanitary waste from the on-site restrooms, which is known as black water to anyone familiar with campers and RVs, those are collected in holding tanks that are pumped out biweekly and treated at a municipal wastewater treatment plant. Finally, we collect annual groundwater samples from over 20 on-site monitoring wells and surface water from one on-site and one off-site location to monitor the water quality and ensure that contaminated water is not leaving the site. Results from our annual water monitoring programs from 2013 through 2023 are available on our public website. So the safety of our workers is also included in our overall commitment to safety. We want every one of our site workers to go home at the end of the day without injury or exposure to contamination. All site personnel are properly trained to understand the hazards present at the site, how to properly wear personal protective equipment, or PPE, and other relevant health and safety topics when they first start working at the site and then annually thereafter. Part of our worker health and safety program includes annual medical monitoring and physicals for those workers who may be working around contaminated materials. Everyone who works in areas where contaminated wastes are present, or what we'll call the dirty zone of the site, must wear PPE similar to what's shown in that photo. Basically, the dirty zone is that area of the site where there's known actual or potential contamination and where there is the greatest risk of exposure to contamination. So as you can see, this worker is wearing a full-face, powered air purifying respirator, which filters the air that they breathe to prevent inhalation of contaminated particles, and a full Tyvek suit with gloves and overboots that are sealed to the Tyvek suit with tape to prevent getting contaminated soils on their clothes or their skin. In addition, all on-site workers will wear those high-visibility safety vests to help others see and locate them. Every worker coming out of the dirty zone must pass through our decontamination facility where they will safely and methodically remove their PPE, take a shower, change into clean clothes before entering the clean zone of the site. They will have to go through this procedure each time they exit the dirty zone, which for most workers will be twice a day, once at lunchtime and then once again at the end of the day. Any reusable PPE, such as the respirators and undergarments, will be washed and decontaminated so that it will be clean and ready the next time that it's needed. As mentioned previously, all of the water generated from the activities in the decontamination facility will be collected and treated by the on-site wastewater treatment plant. We will use all of these best practices to ensure that our workers are not exposed to contaminated waste and they do not inadvertently take contamination home with them and spread it to their family and community. So in addition to protecting the air, water, and our workers, we have taken numerous measures to ensure your safety during normal working conditions and any anticipated emergency incidents. One of the work plans that the project team has developed is known as the Project Safety Analysis, or PSA. The purpose of the PSA is to document how the project can be safely executed with respect to the workers, the public, and the environment. The PSA describes the current site conditions, the proposed cleanup actions, the project hazards, and the controls that will be implemented to assure safety. The PSA includes an evaluation of potential natural and human-made accidents, such as earthquakes, floods, snow, tornadoes, flammable fuel sources, an airplane crash, highway accidents, and wildfires, just to name a few. The project team considered the impacts of each of the accident scenarios to the site and determined what, if any, effects they would have on the public. This comprehensive document serves as the basis of our on-site controls to prevent accidents and to respond to the impacts of a site-related accident. For nearly 2 years, we have been coordinating with your local first responders through meetings, trainings, and most recently, tabletop exercises, basically to practice their specific roles and responsibilities. You can think of a tabletop exercise as performers of a play practicing their lines, reviewing their cues and their onstage movements. Tabletop exercises are accomplished by getting all of the key players together in a room, sitting around a table, and talking through potential scenarios with all the participants, identifying their roles and the actions they would take, just like the one shown in that photo. So those emergency responder tabletop exercises will conclude later this year with a live on-site emergency drill that will simulate an emergency at the site. Similar to our previous comparison, the on-site emergency drill is like a full dress rehearsal with all participants performing the actions they would take in the event of an actual emergency. The on-site emergency drill is scheduled to take place on September 10th of this year. And during that drill, you will see and hear emergency vehicles responding to the site, and you'll see first responders arriving to care for a potentially injured worker. We will send out several notifications through our usual means to remind you of when this drill will take place. Also, in the month of September, we will be testing other site emergency alarm systems that may be heard by the public. These alarms will warn site workers that contaminants or dust are approaching levels where continuing work could exceed exposure limits. Through these exercises and drills, the workers and emergency responders rehearse the actions needed to respond to an incident, identify any gaps or opportunities for improvement, and increase their readiness to quickly and effectively respond to an incident at the site. Last month, we held a separate tabletop exercise with our federal partners who signed the Memorandum of Understanding for SLDA, namely the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Department of Energy Office of Environmental Management, and the National Nuclear Security Administration. Just like the other tabletop exercises, the purpose of this one was to identify roles and responsibilities, establish lines of communication, and rehearse the actions we would take to address any special nuclear material found on site. In response to concerns raised by several individuals during our last meeting, we are better prepared to explain who you should turn to in the event of an emergency. Regardless of whether an emergency situation is related to our work at the site or not, your local officials and first responders have the sole responsibility for determining what actions are necessary to protect your well-being, up to and including evacuation, and for taking the necessary steps to ensure your safe evacuation. If the emergency situation is related to an on-site incident, your local emergency officials will consider our information and input related to that incident, decide what actions to take to ensure your safety, and notify you of the situation. This is the standard response in large-scale emergency situations. A hurricane provides a good example of that relationship. When a hurricane approaches, the National Weather Service communicates the severity and expected impacts of the storm to local municipalities. The local municipalities are then responsible for informing the public of what actions they should take to ensure their safety and carrying out emergency response activities that are necessary. Your local emergency officials will be the ones to tell you what to do and when to do it, and to assist you based on your needs. As mentioned previously, several of your local emergency officials are here tonight and can answer questions you might have. So now that we are getting closer to the start of remediation, I want to share with you some more details about how the remediation will be accomplished and what activities that you can expect to see going on at the site. So here, this is a brief description of what a typical day in the life at SLDA will look like during remediation. The normal work schedule will be 10-hour days, Monday through Friday, each week. During remediation, workers will begin arriving at the site around 4:30 a.m. There will be a total of about 150 personnel working at the site. For comparison, there's about 180 workers working at the site right now, doing the site preparation work. Care will be taken to ensure that the traffic on River Road is not disrupted while workers are arriving. Most workers will park their vehicles at the lower administrative area down by River Road, and then those workers will be transported up to their work areas on on-site shuttle buses. Each workday will begin with a safety meeting and going over the planned work activities for that day. And then once the workers have put on their necessary personal protective equipment and dispersed to their respective work areas, there's actually will be very minimal on-site activities visible to the public. On waste shipping days, you may see 3 waste shipments leaving the site around mid-morning. Waste shipping is expected to occur just 2 days per week with up to 3 trucks, each delivering 2 waste containers per day. So that won't be happening every day. Site operation and maintenance activities such as grass cutting, snow plowing, deliveries, septic tank pumping, those will continue on their routine schedules throughout the week. You'll probably see the water truck spraying down the haul road to control the dust several times per day, except on rainy days when Mother Nature does that job for us free of charge. You'll also notice workers collecting filters from the perimeter air monitors on a weekly basis. Guards will continue to be seen making routine patrols around the site. Lunch times for the workers will be staggered to allow enough time for them to safely remove their PPE, shower, eat lunch, and then put on clean PPE before returning back to work. 3 more waste shipments will leave the site in the early afternoon, again on those days that we are shipping waste. At the end of the day, workers will again remove their PPE, shower, put on their street clothes, and participate in an end-of-day meeting to report what was accomplished and then what is planned for the next day. The workday for most workers will end around 4:30 p.m., and most workers will have left the site by 5 o'clock. About 10% of the workforce, including laboratory personnel and cleaning crews, will work later to ensure that information and equipment is ready for the next workday. Only the guards will be present on site 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. This graphic illustrates the overall remediation process and potential waste streams. Again, the process we plan to use is a slow, methodical approach focused on safety and not schedule. Various specialized technology and equipment will be used to make decisions at key measurement points throughout the excavation, characterization, and packaging process. Each key measurement point is designed to further characterize the material and reduce risk. Our robust and comprehensive work plans will guide every step of the process. As shown in the figure, there are basically 4 potential paths for the excavated materials. So first, any soils that are below our cleanup goals and that meet PADEP regulations for reuse will be stockpiled on site for backfilling the trenches when we're done. Second, any non-FOOSRAP waste will be set aside for BWXT to manage. Third, our FOOSRAP waste will be transported for commercial disposal at either Energy Solutions or WCS in Texas. And then finally, any waste that cannot be commercially disposed will involve our federal partners who will assist us with disposal or recovery. So I want to talk for a minute about the big picture when it comes to how we will conduct the remediation. So these 8 bullet points are a summary of the activities, procedures, and processes that are detailed in the thousands of pages that make up the dozens of project work plans that spell out exactly how the work will be done. So bear with me as we walk through this brief explanation of our remediation activities together. Remediation is going to start inside Excavation Building 1, which is that great big tall one that you can see out there when you drive by, in Trench 8. Before we start to dig, the top 6 inches will be scanned using specialized radiation detectors to make sure that it's safe for us to dig. Once that's done and it's safe to proceed, we will use an excavator to carefully remove the top 6 inches of soil, gathering up no more than a half cubic yard at a time. And just for demonstration purposes, this is just a regular iPhone. That's about 6 inches. So that's how much of the surface we'll be taking off at a time. It's not very much. And a half cubic yard, if you're curious, those bags, this is one of our soil bags. I'm going to talk about this in a minute here, but those hold a half a cubic yard. So we're taking a very small volume at a time. So that same amount of material, that half cubic yard, will be placed into one of those heavy-duty plastic soil bags, which will be sealed shut with a zipper and a Velcro seal. And by the way, you can come up and feel free to look at that. It's a clean bag, it has not been contaminated. Feel free to, check it out. Have your photo taken with it, whatever you'd like to do. Incidentally, that bag, of course, it is approved for storing and transporting contaminated waste. What that means is that bag itself is a transportation container. You could safely transport those wastes just in that bag alone, but we're not going to do that. So once it's filled, the soil bag will be placed inside a square metal tray to enable easy movement of the bag once it's full. The soil bag and the tray will then be transferred to the material processing building for additional testing. Excavation will continue in this fashion: scanning, excavating a half cubic yard of material, and sealing the soils into a bag. If the team finds any debris, like metal, plastic, trash, things like that, those will be removed during the soil excavation and placed in their own soil bag or an appropriately sized drum. Those will be checked for safety and then moved to the material processing building for additional testing. Once the soil bags and drums enter the material processing building, they will undergo additional checks, tests, and sampling to determine what those materials are. Some of the technologies used to check the materials include X-ray units, similar to the ones used in the airport to scan luggage, and additional specialized meters that can identify certain radionuclides. Once the material in each soil bag or drum have been thoroughly checked and tested, they will be transferred to the waste management building to be prepared for shipping. After the soil bags and drums are placed in the waste management building, they will be carefully loaded into the waste shipping containers known as intermodal containers. Intermodal containers resemble large metal boxes with secure locking metal lids. I have a photo here in just a second. And these are used routinely for transporting things by truck and rail. So once the intermodal containers have been loaded with the soil bags, about 20 of them per container, and any drums or other containers that we may have, the lid is secured shut and it will remain closed until the intermodal containers arrive at the disposal facility in Clive, Utah. Before we ship each intermodal, the team will carefully check each one, making sure its surface is clean and that there is no contamination, using radiation detecting meters similar to those used inside the material processing building. Up to 2 intermodal containers will be loaded onto a tractor trailer to be transported to the railroad transload facility up in Wampum, Pennsylvania. This depends on how heavy each intermodal weighs. The site team will check each tractor trailer's gross weight before it leaves the site using a Pennsylvania Department of Transportation certified truck scale, making sure that each truck and trailer complies with shipping regulations. Each and every truck and trailer will be inspected prior to leaving the site by USACE personnel to ensure it meets all safety requirements for transport. I'm sorry, USACE is the acronym for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, if I didn't mention that previously. So the Corps of Engineers will sign off on the waste manifests or the shipping documents before giving them to the truck driver. The truck and the drivers will be licensed and certified to transport waste in the state of Pennsylvania. So these photos are from the first phase of remediation back in 2011 and should help to illustrate the composition of the waste that were buried at SLDA. As you can see, they resemble common trash. They consist of random mixtures of radiologically and chemically contaminated debris, including lab waste, old equipment, building materials, protective clothing, general maintenance materials, and we're told possibly a truck. The first phase of remediation confirmed the presence of both beryllium and special nuclear material, or SNM as it's known, in the waste. It's important to note that the waste can be safely handled due to the low levels of radiological contamination, wearing the right PPE. If the waste were more highly contaminated, we could not package and ship them in the manner that I just described. And we recognize that this is a common misconception about radioactive waste, right? Most of our lives, we've learned or heard from others that radioactive wastes are extremely dangerous. We've seen images of glowing objects or metal drums with bright green liquids. They're always bright green. Remember Homer Simpson taking that bright green test tube home with him? So while it is true that some radioactive wastes, something like spent fuel from a nuclear reactor, for example, those are dangerous. But we simply have not encountered nor expect to find those wastes here at SLDA. The bottom line is that the vast majority of the waste that we'll be shipping do not pose an immediate hazard from exposure. If we do encounter waste that require different handling or shipping methods, we will call on our federal partners' expertise to safely package and transport those wastes. So, we understand that you have concerns about these waste shipments traveling through your community, and we have carefully planned and coordinated our waste shipping process to keep you safe. Please understand, and I'll echo what Lieutenant Colonel Burnham said earlier, the Corps of Engineers has decades of experience with safely shipping food-wrap waste from other projects, and we have applied that same experience to this project as well. So for example, as of last month, we have successfully shipped over 19,800 loads of food-wrap waste from another food-wrap project located in Ohio, where the waste trucks have traveled over 2,871,000 miles without incident. To put that in perspective, it's just over 6 trips to the moon and back. The reason we've been so successful is because of our rigorous oversight and procedures to ensure that every waste shipment makes it to its disposal facility in the safest manner. We will do the same here at SLDA. As I mentioned a little bit ago, transportation safety starts with packaging the waste into the soil bags, which are then loaded into the intermodal shipping containers, as shown in these photos, that are sealed shut for the entire duration of their trip. Each load is properly labeled and manifested to meet U.S. Department of Transportation and U.S. EPA requirements. Every waste shipping container is decontaminated and screened to ensure no contamination is being carried off-site. Each truck and shipping container is inspected by trained and qualified Corps of Engineer on-site staff before each truck leaves the site. The waste will be driven on designated routes to a licensed railroad transload facility that I mentioned previously in Wampum, Pennsylvania, which is approximately 60 miles northwest of the site. In the unlikely event of an accident during transport, no immediate hazard from waste exposure is expected. For a closer look at the designated transport routes, please visit our waste transportation poster after the presentation. All right, I will now turn you back over to Carol, who's going to open up our question and answer session.
As always, we'd like for everyone to be respectful for each other. We would like you to raise your hand, and the purpose for that is, because just like you couldn't hear me, we'd like everyone to hear your question. So Don and Andrew on that side will have microphones. If you raise your hand, they'll bring the microphone to you so that way we can ensure that everybody hears your questions. Please wait to speak when you have the microphone. That would be great. And then only one person speak at a time so that way we can make sure that we're getting the right question by the right people and that there's no confusion about what the question is. And then if we could just ask everyone to hold their side conversations down to a minimum, that way everybody sitting around you can hear the answers to the questions. We would greatly appreciate that. And next time I will not staple this together.
Hey, and just one thing while she's flipping the page here too. We brought our entire team here. We've got all of the expertise in this room. If there are questions, even if it's just to clarify anything in the presentation, ask away. We've got Steve Reeson who's going to kind of assist with identifying the appropriate person that can really fully answer your question. But we all came here. This is why we're here. We want to get to your questions, get to the bottom, and give you the fullest answers that we can. So,
Yes.
Carol.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. Steve is here to facilitate the Q&As, and he's going to make sure that your questions get answered by the right person. There you have it. So we already have our first question here.
Short and sweet, what do you do with the unacceptable wastes?
I'm sorry, I did the.
What do you do with the unacceptable wastes?
The unacceptable waste, so the ones that are not suitable for commercial disposal. So as I said, we have our federal partners who signed the site-specific memorandum of understanding, the NRC, the DOE, the NNSA. For any of those types of waste, we would call them in and they would assist us with their expertise to ensure that those materials are properly packaged and transported and disposed and removed from the site.
You say that you're going to inform the public if you have a leak or something goes wrong, and our local officials are supposed to respond to that and inform the rest of the township people. So what are the plans for that? Like, how is our local officials going to inform the rest of the public?
Okay, so I'll repeat the question because I was having a little trouble hearing it. So the question was, we've stated that if there is an incident on site, we will inform your local officials, first responders of that, and then they will assist you. So basically, I guess I would like to turn to some of those local officials to help answer that question. How would the notifications be made? How would you let them know?
Yes, if we, I don't think about it. If we have any problem, we will the first person we will get a hold of. All right, the first person we'll get a hold of would be Armstrong 911. They would help us alert everybody with different channels that they have. We will drive the streets if we have to. You will be notified as soon as we find something out. We have other departments that are coming in to help us. We have probably 40 different people that are going to come and help us canvass Parks Township just to get them safe, and then it'll go out to the other communities. So we do have a lot of people that will be there to let you guys know if something is happening.
You said that the waste that is buried is not like the green glowing waste, and it's not that bad. Then why are you taking only a half of cubic feet whenever you're digging? I mean, why do you have to be that careful if you're thinking it's not that bad?
Well, again.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? They didn't hear it over here.
Oh, sure. So the question was, if the wastes aren't that glowing green liquid, like we all learned about, then why are we only excavating like such a small volume at a time? And the reason comes back to safety, right? To make sure, as I said, first we're going to scan each lift of soil or waste with those specialized radiation detectors to make sure there's no objects or, as I said, other debris that needs to be removed. And we're going to, excavate that small volume because that's what the experts have determined is a volume that can be safely removed under all of the controls that we put in place.
Is what you were saying. You don't think that it's that dangerous, but you're still taking all these precautions?
Well, I mean, so the wastes are chemically and radioactively contaminated. So they are contaminated waste. But, again, as you saw in the photos, a person wearing the proper protective equipment could hold the waste in their hand. And actually, I'm going to call on one of our health physicists here, or Oh, actually, I'm going to call on Michelle. This is Michelle Barker. She is the engineering technical lead for the project, and she's going to bail me out here.
So that's a great question. So when we go to these disposal facilities, they have what's called waste acceptance criteria, and it tells us how much of different radionuclides or chemicals that they can take. So we need to have an accurate means of what goes into these intermodal containers. So that's why, it's a slow process. We go in and make sure that, whatever we put into these intermodal containers can be accepted by the facility. If we go over those limits, they can tell us they won't accept the shipment, and then we have to send it back and repackage it. So it's just to make sure that those limits are not exceeded and they can accept the shipments.
And I guess just one thing I wanted to add, because I get it. It kind of sounds contradictory, but the wastes themselves, there's not an immediate or hazard to exposure if you're wearing the right personal protective equipment. But again, we wouldn't want people coming into contact this or handling it, or even worse, inhaling the dust or ingesting the dirt or the contamination off of it. But in the same manner, it's not that glowing, hot, radioactive waste that's emitting radiation, where you would need to, use shielding or keep far away from it. It's not that type of waste. And I don't know, maybe Bill or Jessica, could you explain that better than I did? But that's essentially, we're not dealing with extremely hazardous, toxic, radioactive waste. Oh.
What I understand is how you're saying that it's not that necessary for everybody to be notified if something happens immediately until you test it. I mean, I just don't understand how you can say it's not that bad if you're spending $72 million to pull it up.
So I guess, is the question then, why are we removing it?
It's not
Okay.
that bad. Leave it alone.
All right. So we did consider that. So actually, I have another slide here that I didn't go over, but so starting way back in 2001, we began, our assessment of the site under the Foods Wrap program. So the process that we follow to do this, you can see the acronym there, CERCLA. It stands for the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act of 1980. You all may know of it as Superfund. So we follow the same rules and procedures that EPA would on a Superfund site. So those are the various steps and phases that we go through to determine ultimately what we do at a site, at a contaminated site. So, during the, those first couple of phases there, the preliminary assessment, site inspection, remedial investigation, that's when we start to get an understanding of what the nature and extent of contamination is at the site. Once we know that, then we conduct what's called a feasibility study. And during that, we take that information that we gain from the remedial investigation and we consider different alternatives for how to safely address that contamination. One of those alternatives that was considered was leaving the waste in place. That's usually one at most any contaminated site. The bottom line is, through the course of that feasibility study, we do different risk assessments, human health risk assessments, environmental risk assessments, to try to determine what the risk is to, someone living at the site or, whatever that future land use may be, what would be that individual's exposure over a period of time, either over their lives or whatever the case may be. So long story short, through that process, we determined that there would be an unacceptable risk to, leaving that waste in place over the long term. And really, the best thing to do, the best way to prevent exposure to that waste, the best thing to do to help the community is to remove that waste and instead put it someplace that has been specifically designed and permitted to safely contain that waste, rather than leave it out at the site, where it was just buried in trenches.
Yeah, and just to kind of jump on the back of that, really just to boil it down is this painstaking process that we go through to study this through the feasibility study to fully understand what is the best course of action. And that's the kind of the array of alternatives that Steve was talking about. But we have projects, you're right, there's some other projects that we have that, yes, we cap it. We just leave it in place because we have studied, and through the course of that study, through the record of decision, we have public information meetings. It's all done transparent in the open as we're looking at this, as we're studying this, and this was the best course of action to really remediate the site. But great question, though.
So just in case, like, I know you say you're going to have everything contained, and you're checking the water, you're checking air, but is somebody going to be checking the river just in case something does go down through where they mined and the contaminated water gets out and into the river? Are they going to be checking the river, and how often?
So the question was, in addition to doing the sampling at those on-site groundwater wells, will we be sampling the river to make sure that none of those waters are escaping through the mines? And the answer is yes. Some of the on-site groundwater wells are installed into the old abandoned mines underneath the site, so we can collect water directly from those abandoned mine works. And then we do collect a surface water sample at the outlet of Carnahan Run before it flows into the Kiski River.
Hello, right here. I have a question a little bit piggybacking from this lady's question in the back row here. My girlfriend and neighbor and I, we live just a stone's throw away, and we've been coming to these meetings for probably the last 3 to 4 years. Even when Patty Amina was still with us, God bless her soul, she's done a lot for this cause. But in reference to that, I know for a fact back in 2011, because actually it's sort of ironic, my husband works with a woman that her son worked for Cabrera. Okay. And you know the company Cabrera.
I do.
I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yes.
And she actually said, her son said they had to stop Johnny on the spot. They ran into things they didn't have a clue what to do with. So I think that's sort of in response to what this lady's saying. And you're saying you think you pretty much know what's there. But if that's the case, then they ran. Now you guys might be better versed in taking care of that situation in lieu of what they were. But he literally said they had to stop Johnny on the spot. They didn't know what to do with things. And thus it did stop in 2011. Correct. So I guess my question to you is, are you going by the company's records of what you think is buried there and what they put there and such? Or what are you really basing on how you think you know what's there? And one other question I have is one other meeting. You said on the trenches you were covering all of them, but like a couple certain ones. Well, why would that be? To me, that's almost like covering your flowers for frost, but I'm not going to cover this flower bed. I'm going to cover all the rest, but I'm not going to cover this one particular one. So that's my questions I had.
All right, thank you. So we'll take the first question, which was, again, I'll try to repeat it as best I can, but basically, how do we know, or how are we sure that we're ready this time when you mentioned that incident that happened back in 2011? Basically, the reason that happened, that whole situation, is the contractor at the time, Cabrera, they weren't equipped to fully characterize the waste that they had taken out of the ground. Because they couldn't do that, certain assumptions had to be made in the name of safety. They were very conservative assumptions at the time because it was just based on the knowledge that we had. So yeah, that's why we did. We had to stop work. You saw the increase in security. We called in one of our federal partners who did have the capability to further characterize that waste. In the end, it really turned out, unfortunately, to be a whole lot about nothing. Right. So this time, with all of those buildings, with all of the equipment, the instrumentation, bringing more experts to bear to the project, we now have those capabilities to characterize whatever we're bringing out of the ground. Certainly we have used, historical records and inventories to help guide our design and our planning for the project, but, we readily admit that there is no complete 100% accurate inventory of the wastes that are in the ground, and nor do we consider any estimates from anyone to be accurate. So that's why we've put in place, all of the equipment, all of the instruments, all of those key measurement points that I mentioned earlier, because this time we are now prepared to be able to characterize and know exactly what those wastes are.
Yeah, and just to pile on, with respect to the investment being made, as you take a look at the site and the big structures being built and everything that's been described, and the slow, methodical processes we're using, that's all designed to allow us to be able to take a bite at a time, to really use the right science, to be very deliberate, and to prioritize safety. That's really what it comes down to. And I think the second question was the 3 trenches
Yes.
that are mostly empty, but just need a little bit of touching up before we call them complete.
That's correct, sir. So again, going back to the primary purpose for those excavation buildings is to enable us to be able to work year-round, in bad weather, in winter, things like that. So the 3 trenches that were previously partially remediated, there isn't a whole lot of waste material left in those trenches. So those can be completed in one construction period so that we can avoid periods of bad weather. And just because of that, we determined that, a structure like the excavation building over trenches 4 through 8, for example, which will span, more than 1 year, wasn't required. You're welcome.
Steve, I'm over here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, short guy. I'm a newcomer to these kind of meetings. I'm really impressed. I think you guys covered and doing a lot of things that is needed. But I wanted to ask you, what is your worst nightmare? What scenario would be created that you're saying, we never expected this?
What is my worst nightmare? Saying something to get these 2 guys in trouble. That's my worst nightmare. But
I was going to say vampires.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to save you there.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
And just from a command perspective, right, to be honest with you, we have all of these different food swap sites that my district does. I have no immediate operational nightmare. I know that everything that we're doing is to spec, to the rules, regulations, laws. The thing that I do lose a little sleep over, though, is are we communicating enough? Are we getting it out into the public? And I have 2 different projects in the last year that a headline can get out. I'll tell you, with FUSRAP, with radiological materials, it's very easy to editorialize kind of what we do. You throw radiation, Manhattan Project into a title of a newspaper, you're going to get clicks. People are going to read it. And so that's what my big concern is getting the information out to the public, to you all, so you can understand exactly what we're doing. We're above board. Everything that we're doing, we're transparent. We are really good at what we do. We just need to get that message out there. And that's really, that's what kind of eats at me, making sure that we are getting that message out.
Yeah, I'll just pile on. I think for me, it's just maintaining that relationship of trust with all of you. Before this session, I was talking to your great police chief, and he was sharing with me that his daughter works in the Pittsburgh district and is one of our employees. And we've got folks whose parents have come to these public meetings, and this district's been involved with this mission for a long time. And so it's important for us to deliver for you. I mean, we're of this place. We're the Pittsburgh district. We're the Headwaters district. So it matters to us to deliver on this. And, you know, and you even take someone like our PAO, Carol Vernon. She's been working on this project maybe, I'm going to say a decade. It gets dangerous if you start editorializing more than that. But we care. So maintaining that trust is incredibly important to me as commander.
Hi, my name's Brenda. I'm from Kiskimere. A number of my resident fellow neighbors have come up to me in the last few days and said, hey, get to the meeting and talk for us, and this is what we need to say. And then come back and we'll all meet. So the first one, I don't know how, I have 3 questions actually.
Okay.
You want them one at a time or?
One at a time is good, sure.
Okay. The first one, at the last meeting, Colonel Malin?
Malene?
I'm sorry. I spoke with you as I spoke during the meeting, and we discussed about having a look at for another form of evacuation if necessary. You told me you'd come up, you'd look at it, we'd hear something. Here we are months later. There is yet no other evacuation route in the works that I'm aware of. So I'm guessing that that has been nixed, and if we get off the hill, we're good. If we don't, you'll buy us a box. Where are we on that?
So we did have a series of very in-depth meetings with our first responders, and I'd like to turn it over to our leader on that front.
Yes, the lady just left that owns Monheim Lane. That is the emergency way to get out. It's tore up right now, but they have been putting truckload after truckload of gravel on that road to make it safe. But every time the gravel gets put on, we have a bad storm, the water runs down the road, it washes the gravel away.
So therefore, there is no alternative
So
route
that
off
is
hill.
the only other way that we had, but it keeps getting washed out every time it rains.
So with that being said, thank you, Joel, for clarifying that. We do not have a way off that hill, so we might as well bend over and kiss whatever part you can get to, actually. So that's question.
Wait, she has something to pile on that, yes?
Okay, the township does have an evacuation plan. We cannot give the detail. No, it's confidential. It's not something that you want.
Wait. Confidential?
Our whole emergency plan is
You don't live
confidential.
on a hill. Who doesn't live on a hill? And
Doug,
it's
do you want to?
confidential?
Doug,
Really?
Doug, do you want to say something about this? But it's confidential. We're not going to put that out for the, if you've got some crazy, and I'm just paraphrasing, that thinks this whole thing is ridiculous and they know that's what we have planned, anything can be done. It's just a confidential document. The people that need to know to get everybody evacuated safely, know. It's not something that's going to be broadcast and made public, and it never has been.
Okay, to move along on that, I was in EMS.
Next question.
For longer than most of you probably have. Sir, enough. For longer than most of you have been alive. A timely fashion for EMS response, and these guys do well, don't get me wrong. But there are many things that preclude that fast response. And it doesn't happen as well as you think it should.
No,
So
I
you're
am
telling
not
me that
the
my
emergency
safety is a
coordinator.
confidential information to get off that hill. Okay. So the next question raised was the dust control that you're saying that you wash 2 to 3 times a day. it doesn't come through that chain link fence out onto Kiskimere Road?
The dust?
The dust that you're washing off of your road that you're concerned about only goes to your road. It doesn't go through that chain link fence into any of the adjoining properties. Is that what I'm to understand?
So once the dust is wetted down, it's no longer airborne. It can't be picked up in the wind and spread off site.
But between the time that it gets there and you wet it down, potentially there is danger of it coming through that chain link fence. You guys are all wearing your PPE inside, and the air blows through, and we outside within 1,000 feet of that area have no protection.
So that was why we have that layered approach to our air monitoring program, including those site perimeter air monitors, which will, as I said, they have real-time dust measurement to let us know, if there is any dust leaving the site and how much.
Okay.
So if it were, to do that, we would know. And, just to be clear, the alarms on those dust meters are set well below, what the allowable limit is to alert us that, hey, maybe we potentially have a problem here. We need to address this.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that's that third layer of protection.
Okay. And my last question that was just brought up tonight was your on-site emergency drill that's going to be held on Wednesday, the 25th of September?
The 10th, September 10th.
Okay. It's a Wednesday, I believe.
I believe so.
Will that be during daylight hours when most of our residents are at work or in school and won't afford the ability to know what to do in the event of a true emergency?
I believe it will be during daylight. Josh, do you know? Okay, the time?
It will likely be during daylight hours. We are not going to announce the exact time because that defeats the purpose of a drill to some extent. We want to have some realness applied to it. That drill will entail an incident on the site. So an injury, a fire, etc. And that drill will walk through the emergency response to the site to deal with that injured worker or situation all the way to resolution. So we want to make sure that the community knows that it's happening so that you're not concerned if you see emergency response vehicles going to the site, but it should not have any community impacts other than the response on site. Does that make sense?
So earlier, whenever you shared that timeline, and you might want to go back to it, in the early 2000s, you conducted the feasibility study and you determined from multiple different options, including the option to leave it in place,
Correct.
that removal was better, safer for the community than leaving it in place. That decision was made, recorded in 2007. It's now 2025. And I see the yellow box there, and it includes like a lot of like bureaucratic stuff. So from 2007 to 2025, you knew that it was safer to remove it than leaving it there, yet it remained there. And this process is going to take another 10 years before it's going to be removed. So safety is a priority, but ought not urgency be a priority as well whenever you've already determined all the way back in 2007 that it's safer to have it removed than keeping it here?
So urgency would be a priority if there was an immediate hazard from the waste on site. Right now, there is no immediate hazard of exposure to anyone coming in contact with those wastes. The site is fenced in. The general public can't access the site to come into exposure with those wastes. So there's no immediate hazard. What we determine, through that process, through the feasibility study, and then as you're right, the remedy is what's recorded in the record of decision, very aptly named. It's the long-term risk, which presents an unacceptable risk level to the community for leaving those wastes there long-term.
And also, I mean, maybe you want to talk to this as well too, Steve, is in 2011, finding that special nuclear material, understanding that we need to be better equipped, that kind of set us back. But if you need to hit any details to that one.
Well, I want to let him know on his point there. I've been here since you guys started. The community was involved in meetings like this, and the community also said, get it the hell out of here.
Right. Thank you, sir. Yeah, so what the gentleman is referring to, as part of that CERCLA process, when we complete that feasibility study and present those alternatives, that proposed plan that comes before the record of decision, that's when we come to the community and say, these are the results of our study. This is the alternative that we believe is best for the community, and this is why. However, the community, as part of the CERCLA process, has an opportunity, an obligation to provide input that could affect, our decision on what the remedy should be. So yes, as the gentleman pointed out, even way back there in 2007, we did hold public meetings like this. We did get that input from the community. The selected remedy was, removing the waste from the community.
And just one other point just to add, the trenches have been continuously monitored for decades, both the groundwater, the surface has been checked multiple times. The materials are contained, so the period of time that has been taken to sort of develop a responsible plan to remove them and the deliberate process we're taking, I mean, it's the safe path to move these materials to Utah or other locations where it can be stored long term. But a tremendous amount of emphasis has been put on safety, not just now in the near term, but really going way back through all of the monitoring that we've done.
I have a question about when you dig up some of the waste, okay? Do you do shovelfuls? Do you do bucketfuls? And then once you get that amount out of the ground, how long does it take to analyze that sample? Do you have to just analyze it on site? Do you also send it off site like they've done in the past? How long does it take for that little bit to be classified, and then you know which pile to put it in? Because I think people might be concerned about the length of time it might take to, do the analysis of it.
Sure. So we will use, excavators. Everybody knows what those are. After we've scanned that top 6 inches, removed anything that, needs to be removed or needs to be looked at individually, the excavator is equipped with a bucket that doesn't hold any more than a half cubic yard. So, we'll take a scoop, if you will. It'll be transferred into one of the soil bags. Once that soil bag is sealed up, it gets moved into the material processing building. The overall process for characterization will kind of depend on what we learn at each of those key measurement points. So if it's just whatever, like normal radioactive contaminated soil, it'll pass through that X-ray unit. We will characterize it as much as is needed, and then that can continue on its path, to getting loaded and then shipped off site. If it's something a little more complex, then we have other paths that sample or that bag will follow through each of those other key measurement points to further characterize it and determine exactly what it is.
But it's a continuous operation. It's
Right.
assembly line.
Yeah. It's Yes, Don?
Okay, so based on your presentation and some of the questions, it's pretty clear that you guys have a good understanding of most likely the nature of the material that's down there, but not a full comprehensive understanding of everything. Is there a plan for a report to be released once the project is completed back to the community, letting them know, like, hey, this is what we found, this was the nature of it? And then this might be irrelevant, but you mentioned Trench 8 is where you guys are going to be starting.
Yes.
Is there anything non-logistical that went into that decision? And yeah, basically, what went into that?
Sure. So that big excavation building is over trenches 4 through 8. Trench 8 is the first one inside the door, so it just makes sense to start with that one and work our way in through that way. So there was no other special reason why Trench 8 was chosen. Yes, at the end of every FUSRAP cleanup that we do, we prepare a closeout report, which documents all of the work that was done. It documents the condition of the site when we were complete. It contains all of the data. So yes, that is a public document and can be posted to the website or distributed through other means. But yes, we do that at the end of every FUSRAP cleanup project.
Just wanted to say I'm in support of everything you're doing and totally respectful of your timelines. There was one mention of the items being left in the ground. Question I do have, what's the cost of not doing it? How long would it take for the specific materials to decay on their own and become inert if we did nothing?
That's a good question. Did everybody hear that? Okay. It's not necessarily a question of how long it would take them to decay. A lot of the long-term risk comes from the fact that there are abandoned mine works underneath the site, which pose the potential for, collapse, subsidence, things like that. If that were to occur, we can't with 100% certainty say that those wastes will remain contained in those trenches. If there were to be an underground mine collapse, it could open up pathways through the rock, through the soil, that would enable the contaminated water that's in those trenches to escape out into the environment. So it's, like I say, it's not necessarily a question of how long would it take for the waste to naturally decay. It's the fact that we can't state for certainty that those wastes would remain contained there over the long term.
I just have a quick question. When they tore down the other building that was in Apollo, they tore down years ago, it was the same affiliate. When they were wrecking it out, they found a hot container in there, and those guys were shifted out pretty quick. What's the chance of that size container that didn't get skipped from there ended up down this site? Because it was supposedly by the government's knowing that it was lost and they couldn't find it. When they were tearing it down the building, lo and behold, it just appears. Same thing down here. You don't know nothing about that container down there, do you?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So you don't know what's down here because they didn't know what was down here when they were letting these guys do in there tearing stuff apart without being in their PPEs and stuff. Well, when they tore us apart down here and this container falls out of the ceiling down here, they run them out of there like rats out of a sinking ship. Now, what's the chance of that same container being hidden in one of these tanks when they drove this stuff down here and it's buried, and you haven't found this on this site yet because it's all mixed in with the stuff that you're trying to evacuate?
So again, back to what I said earlier, yeah, we don't consider any estimates, of or inventories of what was put in the trenches to be accurate, because no such complete inventory exists. So that's why we've taken what I'm sure seems like a very long time to come up with very detailed, very robust work plans, very safe, methodical, slow procedures to advance the excavation, advance the removal of that waste very slowly, very methodically, so that, if we do encounter something unusual, we have the proper procedures and characterization methods to be able to safely remove that, characterize it, and find out exactly what it is.
And that's kind of the known unknowns, right? And that's baked into what we do. Steve said earlier, even during the remedial investigation, we can never be 100% certain about the history of the site. And we see this with all of our other projects and everything else. This goes to why we are sometimes slow but deliberate, right? Because that's safety. And we've said it a dozen times now, but the safety aspect of it, that we move at the speed of safety.
If they would damage, like say what they had down here, this was damaged when it hit the ground. If you would hit something down here the same way, are these PPEs capable of taking care of the exposure of, say, active plutonium?
Yes, that's how our program is designed, right? It's designed to anticipate, the unexpected, or anticipate things that could be harmful. I don't know if I'm answering that very well.
Yeah, and just to add in, that's the reason why you see all these structures getting built, and you see all the activity on the site, and we're building a separate wastewater treatment plant and all these other steps. It's to ensure that we're prepared for what could potentially be in the trenches. And some study has been done from the surface, so we get a general idea, but we still are being very careful. So that's the reason why there's so much investment.
Hi. So I was just curious. I know you said that the material is buried in trenches, but initially from the beginning, how is it contained? How is it housed? Is it in containers at the moment, or?
So he's asking how are the wastes contained or housed inside the trenches?
Yeah,
And-
I know you said trenches, but is
Right.
it in like boxes? I'm just not aware of.
It can be in a variety of containers. Again, some of it may be in drums, some of it could be in boxes, although I suspect by now those boxes would be pretty deteriorated. It really depends on, what was put in there. So that's why we're being prepared and anticipating to find just about anything.
So at the time, the technology stated that these containers would be good for the moment, or the best way to go about it, but ultimately over time they just deteriorate.
They can, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Where we live, out on Booker Lane, there's 5 families that live back out there. If that goes off, we have to come right past it to try to get to Monahan's Lane. They said they would give us an access road out of here, but then they met with us and they said the Army Corps of Engineers is not going to give us another way out. We'd have to come right past that facility, which the last meeting was called the Great White Elephant. We got to come right by it in order to get out. How can we get to Monahan's Lane to get out of there?
Yes, sir. We as our first responder team said, we're going through rehearsals and working through the response and taking great care to ensure that the right plans are in place. And we have our Julie D'Annunzio, our emergency operations chief, who can further elaborate.
Sir, we looked at several different options based on the concerns about the access road and the ability to leave if necessary. I think Joel can stand up. We talked to Parks Township. We wanted to find the best, least intrusive method to ensure your safety. In discussions,
we were explained that if somebody needed to evacuate, that the township has the ability to evacuate their citizens. And that is the best method, because evacuations, emergency response starts local and ends local. Your emergency responders know you, they know your concerns, they know your challenges. And that is why we did not pursue the access road, because it was my understanding that there was a plan in place.
Yes, the last time we were at the meeting, we discussed about using four-wheel drive vehicles and UTVs. Every department that's around here that has anything invested to do with this has at least one UTV. We have enough UTVs that if we have to go back Booker Lane where there's 5 families, Monheim Lane where there's 8 different families, to get them out. We have four-wheel drive trucks that we can take back if we have to get them out. We do have some, that's why we're doing these tabletops, to see what vehicle we can use the most.
And I just want to assure you that we have studied very carefully and looked at this question, and we have gone through the scenarios like Steve was saying, all the way from a tornado to a hurricane to imagine your scenario. And we've worked through that with all of our experts, and we're working with first responders, and there's a solid plan in place. And the risk associated with those scenarios, we really have taken a hard look, and so that's where that stands. But we took and take your concerns seriously, and we're continuing to work it. We will, for example, we're going through a full, rehearsal on the 10th. We're working through a scenario. We're talking with the first responders to make sure that we've lined up the right kinds of resources, and that's a big portion of the partnership that we're really working, here at the local level, at the regional level, with our interagency partners. And that's the reason why we're coming out and we're meeting with you and dialoguing. This is now my 4th in-person public meeting, and we take very seriously all the feedback we get, and we funnel it right into working on those first responders plans. And I'm very thankful for you, sir, to lay out the plan that's been done. Julie D'Annunzio, my emergency management chief, has been working tirelessly with all of the first responders across this area, and we're dedicated to it. So we're working very hard at that.
Thank you, sir. So this is going to be our last question that I'm having here. If you all have any further questions, please use your comment cards to get your questions down. It is now 8:35, and we were supposed to do 20 minutes, and we've already done almost an hour of question and answer. So I'm going to have this lady here be our last one. And the rest of you all, if you have more questions, please use your comment cards. If you don't want to use your comment card, my phone number is up there. It usually is up there.
Carol, too. We're going to be back at the boards too, and we're going to be up here. So walk on up, ask us questions. We got the whole team here, though.
So you have like I said, all of this line here are subject matter experts. We will be going back to the posters as well with the subject matter experts. They can continue conversation over there if you want to ask more questions. And there's a phone number right here for the Pittsburgh District, 412-395-7500. If you don't get your question answered tonight, feel free to write that number down and call me, because that's my direct line, and give me your question, or send me an email, celrp-pa@usace.army.mil. That's also my direct email. And we will make sure that your questions get to the correct people. But this woman here is going to be our last question publicly for tonight.
Yes, trusting all goes well, looking ahead, after everything is safely removed, what is our landscape going to look like? Is the buildings and all going to be removed and the landscape restored?
Sure. So the question was, what is the site going to look like when we're done with our cleanup project and we leave the site? So per the terms of our site access agreement, basically we have to return the site to as near to as its pre-remediation conditions as possible. So that means, yes, removing the buildings, possibly removing the haul road, basically anything that we put on the site would be our responsibility to remove.
Okay, and again, feel free to go back to the posters where the subject matter experts will be there to answer any questions.